a bunch of those, they're canisters. Yeah. And there's a fire, you throw it in and it just, okay. Well, back in court, he's actually used them out there because he only has a fire.
Won't say anything you shouldn't say on it. Recorded.
Are they gonna keep the other stuff that was recorded?
No, I'll have to pull it together. That's okay. Thank you.
Hopefully I'll make it.
Good luck.
Pretty incredible. That's what he.
Get the top bunk. Get the top bunk.
Because when I was a kid over there.
I hope you're not driving back to Lincolnville. Give it a few minutes.
I'm going to Lincolnville as quick as I can.
Stay on. That's just.
Plus, we always had forest fires over there in the summer.
Oh, yeah, I went to one over there that we were there for almost a day and a
Well, you
half.
know, it's.
I'll make those changes.
Well, forest fires would pop up, the whole island would show up.
Yeah.
You know, we'd all show up and bring whatever we had, shovels and stuff to build fire breaks, you know, because how else do you start? Right. It spreads across the island.
I mean, we've been out there more than we've ever been.
No.
This is the 32nd time out, that's how fast you're gonna talk.
Okay, I got it. All right, hey, here we go. Listen,
Fire
guys,
hydrants.
pay attention.
How do you handle
There's
that?
nothing we
Guys,
can do about it.
Defend really hard and make sure you pass the ball and move. All right. Fire hydrants, other public safety.
I still think we ought to invite them in to, just, you know, what are you gonna do for us this year?
What's you gonna do?
All right, oh, just, well, no, I mean,
Overall, in general, are they gonna improve any of the lines?
They're adding, we're adding one on Rockville and South Street.
Like halfway through public
But
safety.
I mean.
we're still the,
It's
right,
04,
but we're still the ones that have to shovel
Where-
them. Like I shovel every
It's
single one of the
705.
89, 90 something hydrants. They don't
I
do it.
went too far.
Not in this area. Now, if you go
Yeah,
down
you went
south
too far.
in Maine, Maine water does do it down there in certain areas.
Even Lubec Water District shovels.
Right.
well,
It is better by a
What?
flamethrower.
They just getting away with it?
I still think the flamethrower is the
Part of
better
the deal.
option.
I
No one's
like,
ever pushed it here.
I like,
Clear.
I like the weed control idea with a flamethrower. I'm with you on that one.
We control. and fire hydrant melts.
Perfect. 2 for 1. Dual purpose.
We can use it all year that way.
Right, exactly. Get all those, clean up all those leaves and.
You know where it is.
I've never looked into it.
I'm gonna talk fast, but you know, we got.
I'm waiting for the fire call, see what happens.
All right. So other public safety, yeah, so the fire hydrant costs is obviously the big one here. And yeah, we're using some encumbered funds. What is that? What was it? thought we-
Leftover electricity costs.
Oh, right. So then we talked about this during the select board. About using, we've had some savings from electrical. And so we were gonna reuse those towards our street light purchases. So that's us turning it back around into that.
That's for using encumbered.
Yeah.
I know. I think streetlights, we've got 2 more years after this one.
Hmm.
How many more on the roof? Little's done this year.
March.
Yeah.
Next month.
So
Well,
then we're free.
2 days.
what was that, 55,000 roughly?
It was $6,000 a year for 7 years,
Yeah.
whatever that works out to be.
Or 2. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe 35. Maybe plus interest.
Well,
Yeah, nothing else really of note here. All right, sanitation? Who loves sanitation? Everybody loves sanitation. Eric, you wanna go on this one? Obviously, the big one here is Midco Solid Waste. We have a level number there. There, bag, you wanna talk about the bag fee?
Yeah. Well, in order to maintain a level assessment towns. We have discussed raising the bag fee from, on the big bags from $2.50 to $3 and the little bags from $1.50 to $2.
Yeah.
So 57 per bag. And that way we were able to maintain the assessments. And again, the majority of that stems from increased labor costs and the leachate field and the wastewater that gets pumped. That number's huge.
It's funny, I think we're having a similar argument.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works.
The trend lines, just all the way through this thing. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, so basically, everything else is, assuming that the new contracts get built in correctly and they increase rates tremendously. That was the plan for Midco Solid Waste.
I would say this is something to keep an eye on though, because their cost for pumping and treating water, basically, our assessments pay for the care and the maintenance of the quarry. And it's basically that landfilled area. The bag fees are meant to cover our costs for the MSWs, the bagged waste that we throw out. So we try to make the users pay for what the bag waste that we all deal with. The problem is that those quarries are full and they're going to get more and more full. And we're gonna have to pay for the treatment of that water forever. So even if, these numbers are, we're flat right now, that's a great thing. It's nice to not have an increase in one department, but that's a cost we're gonna have for the rest of time. Now, there are ways to try to reduce the amount of water that goes in, and when you cap and close the quarries, usually there's some sort of, plastic sort of covering that would shed water and you can use that water elsewhere. But realistically, we're gonna be pumping and treating water out of those quarries long after we're all gone. So
Very closest to the road is
the one on the other side, or the one that's open, the big one?
the big one on
Oh, yes. Yes.
Bill talking about.
Yes.
Well, that was, they're talking about getting it drained, bringing the levels down there, because some of that water back, if it gets too, just water back towards leachate. And so we want
to bring it down a little bit by draining it across the road and down.
I don't
know, towards the
Yeah.
swampy
Yeah.
area. So that's the current thought. We've also thought of building a mini wastewater treatment facility on site. And it would just handle processing it, but again, that requires draining the output into that same area. Which then, of course, which also drains across and down into the right through the middle of Camden site.
Well, I hope it.
So.
The shoe fits.
And then water that comes out of there isn't pumping it to Camden is really kind of a waste because it's not being treated. Because their facility doesn't treat the byproducts that are in the waste.
Did that?
No. Because that would be it'd be too far away from the outfall of where, so that's part of those, like, how far away you are means how far away you're, like, how far away you are from non-tidal waters that you can, because there's a different standard to which you have to meet if you're in salt or if you're in tidal. So you can be way out to sea, which would be incredibly expensive. So that's something that the Camden could look at. They can put a pipe all the way past Dillingham Point, probably beyond around the bend there, coming back to Rockport. Or, but for us, you imagine, or like for what we've been discussing, in terms of what the town's options are, the spot above in Goose River, that's the least expensive option available. Doesn't mean everyone loves it. That's not really the point, but at least in terms of like shortest run, you've got it there.
What does the EPA say about that?
Well, they're more concerned about the outflow than they are about the park. Of course, remember, but the other part of the park, of course, is the park is waste line also. So it's sort of like
People in town know that there's actually a path back in.
absolutely not.
Pools of water.
Yeah, so it hasn't been used. There is another option too, in that they build their own, there's a we could build, Midco Solid Waste could build its own wastewater treatment plant on site.
Yeah, that's what I would.
Yeah. They could go use Lily Pond. But then the outfall of Lily Pond is right next to the library and then under the homes across the street. So that needs a little bit more vetting.
So when you point that out,
Yeah.
you're saying that that's a public volume thing into space that that's outflow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, right now, we send about 40, Midco Solid Waste sends about 40% of the volume to Camden wastewater treatment that we do. So they send a pretty significant volume of water through their year to Camden wastewater treatment. So we pay like $300,000 a year if we were paying the rates that Camden thinks we should. Whole other story. But they pay the same rate as well. So it's
Yeah, the budget line on that is.
I don't want to make it go later, but we could talk about this for hours. It's wild.
That whole issue, if we have, it's not gonna be in this budget.
No,
And it may not ever impact. It really depends on what we get
And what we
have available.
out of those funds.
Yeah.
So it could be something that's built in and the cost of building the facility is actually cheaper over the time than just sending it to Camden and having it processed. Like the money we're spending could be used to pay the facility itself over the course of 30 years.
But the facility goes, that's to Freeman Park.
Yeah.
Would that be, would that?
We accept that waste.
Yes.
Yes, that's a big part of, trying to offset those. Yeah, absolutely. It's okay. Yeah, it's so much fun. Town office building, here's our last department. The big changes here, we've got the miscellaneous contract, so the modern contract, UniFirst contract. So modern is our pest services. That's our nice way of saying the guys that make sure that we don't have little crawling mousies running around the building. So that's miscellaneous contracts, which is
30.
yeah, okay, got it, okay. UniFirst, which is
Rags and.
yeah, exactly. And then Group Dynamics, they're the company that oversees the FSA that we established in last year's budget. Again, building repairs and mowings, removed of buildings and grounds. We did have a heating fuel decrease, so we installed heat pumps in here last spring. You can hear this one is roaring away. And that's resulted in a big heating fuel decrease. We've used very, very little heating fuel this season. So in addition to what we talked about earlier, where we sort of bumped up those numbers in last year's budget. So we have that decrease. But then on top of that, we project that we're going to continue to use a lot less heat fuel in this building.
Which one is the electric?
305, 33.
There you go. And then just sort of wrapping up, we've got, we're on the equipment schedule, so we have the decrease, just following the replacement, and then we're gonna use because we're spending less out of the commitment reserve, we just have less in revenue, so it's corresponding, it washes itself. That's the town office building.
So what are you planning on doing with the building this year?
One, I'm hoping it doesn't leak. Two, I'm hoping don't ruin any electronic equipment in the process. I mean, it feels like a small bar, like a really low bar to me. Yeah, I think,
No broken sewer lines.
right.
That's the other big one that we don't have to worry about.
Let's keep all the things that hold liquids solid, like.
That would be great.
Yeah, right.
Right.
This is all the way through to the end. Someone else deals with it beyond, but, yeah, no, I mean, if the staffing issues, we talked about that here on Wednesday, with assessing and finance, we're gonna need to address where people sit and have places for people to sit their desks. So, we talked about that last year. I held off because as we got into this year, we got near winter, I saw that we had a staffing issue we had to address, and I don't want to make decisions about spending 45,000 until I know where we sort of land on that other issue. So, that's still a need. I will say that this building through all that, ice and everything did hold up pretty well. But, we're gonna need to be serious about what we're doing for long term. There's a conversation the select board probably needs to have about the Opera House, and it needs to have about this building in terms of public spaces, in terms of having enough room for where people sit, having enough places for people to vote, having enough places for people to meet. Those are conversations. Oh, yeah. And I think, in June, that's probably gonna be where we're gonna go. We can say that now because Chief's gone. So, yeah, we used to do it. And other towns do it, so.
I mean, that's the other hat on. I think there's a lot of stuff you're asking for, a lot of stuff the department heads are asking for. And I would like to think that if we split up in a couple of years rather than all in 1 year. All of it's needed, there's no question.
There's a lot of needs, no shortage. Yeah.
How much is, how much is your bond payment gonna be on the new fire station?
Well, I know how much I'm offsetting it by, I can tell you that answer.
Well,
Because that does make a big impact.
well, I mean, we don't know, that's 2 to 6 either, so.
Right, well, that's right, no, that's true.
But buy the other bond. Yeah, $1.5 million, what, 50,000 a year or 100.
But that was only for 10 years.
We can stick this one out.
So the library bond payment's about 100 a year.
4 years it is now, though, right?
Yeah, but a percentage or two on interest isn't gonna make that big of an impact.
So would we fair to say it would be
105, 110 maybe,
30 years?
depending on what you're bonding, yeah.
The principal is, if the principal's 1.5, let's just say, or 1.3.
How much is the loan rate for every 100,000? I can't remember right now, but this, it is needed, I'm just saying.
The problem is, like we talked about, I've been trying not to beat this drum so hard, but there's a lot of things we just didn't do for a long time. We just didn't, and unfortunately, we're all the ones in these positions having to say, yikes. We've got sidewalks crumbling. I mean, Helen's been talking about the Main Street sidewalk for 15 years probably.
Yeah.
And it probably should have been done 14 years ago, and it's not in here, but it probably should be.
I'm all talking about the white line.
Yeah.
Sidewalk,
Right,
probably 90% of the people don't realize is a sidewalk and is completely, totally
right,
dangerous.
yeah,
Or the cement pad down closer to the bridge.
right, exactly, yeah.
Place the bridge there. pretty well.
Right. 3.85 million of fixing the,
Drainage hole underneath the sidewalk.
Right.
The road runs the other way and the water. And we're gonna snowballs.
yeah, someday it might go over there. I mean, it's
Great idea. Theory.
right. It's just, there's so many frustrations. And that's the hard part, is one of the things we don't know about. We had no idea we were gonna run into this with the Opera House. And that's enough to,
That floor, that subfloor that was under that wooden floor is horrifying.
it's kind of,
They have all the top floor off.
The fact that it held people up to begin with is a miracle.
it's kind of a trampoline.
I would take care of the fiasco lights. I put the guinea lift down, and it has pads, yay big. And half the time where I went, there was no support. It just was through.
Oh, you seriously could put your foot through some of the holes that are in that subfloor.
I feel better about my.
Uh,
Floor. I felt like I was walking in my grandfather's hayloft up there.
Really?
Up there.
Really spongy.
Because there's too much space, yeah.
I'm just putting up insulation, I'm looking out the hole at the lawn of his house.
Yeah.
Just,
Gosh.
yeah,
Yeah, that's all.
Next meeting,
4 years old, 120 years old.
2 days from now.
So Wednesday night, assessing parks, public works, cemeteries, library, opera house, county, schools, debt, special assessments. Lot of fun. A lot of fun on Wednesday. Hey, thanks everybody for coming. 2 in a row. Yeah, I don't know, you can't even see you. I'm only, why is it?
I am quite a bit smaller than the people I was around.
That's true. Yes, yes.
I was not moving without Kevin moving.
No, that's true. Yeah, you were in there. So yeah, so we'll have that, and I know we have some folks who can't make it. I understand why Greg's not here, and Joe Fashion going to a Celtics game, and I wish I was going with him, so we could go together and we can kind of zoom into everybody, but I think we're gonna miss a couple others on Wednesday night as well, so
It's not here tonight.
right. So hopefully she's feeling better. Jim's under the
I
weather.
hope so, because now it's the new week. The work starts back out.
Oh, there's an ulterior motive. I got it. Say no more.
Yeah, because she was out all last week. so-
Oh, really? Oh, my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, nothing contagious, just.
That's good. If any of you have questions, though, about something you heard or something that strikes you on your way home or whatever, Mark will ask questions and he'll come in and we'll sort of, it's, but if you have, if it comes to you and you want to take an email down, I'm glad to, like, Mark had questions about the overtime and all that. And so that's stuff that I was able to put together. And we'll do the same thing with the foreclosures on Wednesday. So if you guys, anybody, that's what open to everybody. I want to think that more listen to Mark, it's all.
So speaking of foreclosures,
Yeah.
and speaking of the Samoset,
Yeah.
and speaking of us doing all the work to get them to the point where they pay us $40.
Oh, yeah.
Why can't we say, the time it took to do it, we charge you $250 or something?